Dr. Marta Katalenas. I am a pediatrician in Round Rock, Texas, which is a central area of Texas near the city of Austin. And I'm here to talk about coronavirus because this is the subject of interest these days, and also to learn some recipes on how to remain healthy with my friend, Chef Fer Candil. Hi, Fer, how are you?
Hi, Marta. Good to see you again. One more week. I'm so happy to be here and talking about more coronavirus. I really enjoy this time talking with you because you are giving us a perspective from the families, like the parents with kids, and how we are very worried about what is going on with the coronavirus. So one thing I would like you to ask, and I have in my mind, is why the coronavirus attack or is more aggressive in a big cities than the small cities, like little village or in the suburbs of the cities.
Right. So yeah, this is an observation that that we had, and it has to do with the density of population. And it's easy to understand. If you are close together, you have millions of people using the subway, buses, trains, public transportation, and you live in apartment buildings with many stories using elevators, common areas. The virus is going to spread a lot easier that day when you're touching things with other individuals than if you live in a little house and you're separated, your neighbor is a distance away. So just think about it. In Spain, for example, we have 46 million people. I don't know how the statistics are these days, but they are in a space that is smaller than Texas. In Texas, we have 25, 28 million in a space that is bigger than Spain.
Yeah.
So if you look at New York City, the incidence there has been like in any large city. It's going to spread faster there. So yeah, it becomes more challenging to isolate when you have your neighbors so close together, definitely.
Yeah, it's not about the tourists, like everyone say, like, okay, Spain and Italy. Of course, the tourism is an influence too.
Sure.
But I think it's more about the closest of the people are living together. So that's the reason of the social distance and even the mask you talked last week.
If you have tourists visiting from other countries, then those are gonna, if they contract the coronavirus there, then they're gonna go and take it to their own places. So that's why the isolation and the cutting down in flights and all those rules that we learned recently that work so well. And so, yeah, if you have a lot of people, whether they are tourists or in Spain, we like to gather to have coffee. We like to walk down the street and it's a crowded street. We like to go to the cafe, to bars, to restaurants. All that is going to make the virus spread. And that's the reason why we are now changing. Hopefully for a limited time, hopefully one day we can go back to what we are used to.
So it was a good idea from our government here in Texas to cancel the South by Southwest.
Oh, definitely, definitely. As unpopular as it sounded initially, South by Southwest is a music festival, very, very popular.
Yeah, international.
The world is not just local. We have bands, we have musicians coming from all over, and that brings thousands of, I don't know, millions maybe of people to see these musicians, and it's a big economic boost to the city in the month of March. So it was decided to cancel it, and at the same time, we save thousands of lives just by that simple decision. So yeah, it was definitely good. We will be under a very, very different situation here in Central Texas.
Yeah, that's good. And I heard you on the other weeks talking about the SARS and the MERS and the other epidemic we suffered in the past. But also, is any relation this coronavirus with the, I think the Spanish flu in 1918?
You know, we talk about, yes, SARS, MERS, those were coronavirus viruses at that time. But we all know the scientific community is very aware that these epidemics are going to happen. They are going to happen. A big one is going to happen, they say, every 100 years. So we were really due for one, if you think about it, because the big one was in 1918, the one you mentioned, the Spanish flu. Although it wasn't originated in Spain, but it got that name, the Spanish flu. So back then it was a flu, it was an influenza virus. It wasn't a coronavirus. But the same thing, we think that emerged from birds probably to a intermediate host and then to humans, and this was a novel virus. Again, something new for which people had no immunity at all. And
it was terrible.
It killed, they say, estimates of 50 million people, 50 million.
Wow.
So back then, of course, the sanitary conditions, the health knowledge, all that was very limited. But it was also, traveling was also limited just because we didn't have airplanes going around the world within hours back then.
Of course.
And so it was a terrible epidemic. You know, if you look back, let me tell you this, I'm reading a book. It's called The White Princess, and is about 15th century England. And this is real in English history. It's about the end of the War of Roses, and it describes an epidemic that happened in the city of London, and they call it the Sweat. The Sweat came, and they came from France with the King, Henry VII, that came in with troops and spread this disease. I thought it was the plague. The author described it was, and it was a coronavirus back then, 1485 England. So we know that these viruses can emerge. We know that it's going to happen. We better be prepared. There is no one can say how big it's going to hit and where and what it's going to start and what kind of symptoms it's going to have. Is it going to be respiratory? And we're going to need more respiratory equipment, or it's going to be gastrointestinal, and we need to be ready to rehydrate. We don't know.
Yeah,
and
we're still learning day by day.
We're learning day by day, and that's the worst kind of learning, the one that you have to do, and you're drawing advice from what we are learning the day before.
Wow. So the million question is, when is going to be safe to go out with the families, with the kids?
Yes, that's a very good question, and this is what governments are trying to decide today. And just like the question of what do I do if I'm sick, or what do I do if I have this disease, is a very, very individual one. The answer to your question is also going to depend on where is your community, where you live, what are the conditions of your family, of yourself, what kind of chronic problems you may have, what age do you have. And so I think every city and every community is going to answer that question on an individual basis. At one point, we're going to have to go out. And my fear here in Central Texas, where we have a relatively low count of the virus, is that by the same token, we are not developing immunity if we are not in such a big contact with it. So when we go out there, it's going to be crucial to know if we have antibodies or not. Remember last time we talked about the serology test, the blood test that will tell us, do you have antibodies, yes or no? It doesn't tell us, do you have the virus, yes or no? That's a different one. That's the PCR. But this other test that is going to tell us if we have antibodies is going to be helpful. It's going to be very helpful to know what percentage of the population out there is immune and what percentage can still be sick by the virus.
Wow, it's interesting. Yeah, because the vaccine looks like it's going to take more time than we expected. No?
Right. We don't know if this virus is going to limit itself, if it's going to spread around the globe, if it's going to go with the winter, going to the southern hemisphere like the flu is doing. We don't know if it's going to do that or not. What we do know, because the preliminary studies show that the rhesus monkeys, which are related to us, the humans, they do develop immunity. They've been able to prove that. So at least that we know that we are going to develop immunity. What we don't know is how much is protective, what level of antibodies is protective. And those antibodies, for how long do you keep them? Are they going to be forever? Or are they going to be for a month or for a week? We don't know. Those are the questions that remain to be answered.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. So what can we do while we are at home to be healthier?
Oh, we can do a lot of things. we're learning now to do a lot of things around the house, and one of them is learning to cook. I am doing your recipes. I send you pictures.
Yeah, I saw you meat roll. Looks
yes.
so beautiful and so yummy.
It was delicious. It was very
Yes.
good. And now we are learning to learn more, because the healthier we eat, the stronger our immunity is gonna be. So
Yes,
let's
I
learn.
agree.
Use this time to learn how to improve that part.
Yes,
So
I think we have to cooperate, doing our best at home, and it's time to eat healthier and more. We talked this about before. More veggies, more fruit, and even cook your own food. I think is very important. We have the culture in Spain to cook a lot, but here in the States is more difficult. Or the people are more in a rush. Our life is more running all the time, so we don't have time. That's the reason many people start baking bread at home, because baking bread requests more time to cook or to prepare all the dough and the sourdough. But yeah, I have my own recipe of bread for you, Marta.
okay, I
You want
can
to try?
down. So just go ahead. Let me
So
know how to make this. I'm gonna making it today.
yes, so I have two different recipes preparing for you. One is for the people who don't have at home any yeast or any bread flour. If you don't have any of bread flour or yeast, you don't have excuse to prepare bread, to bake bread. Why? Because you can make your own pre-ferment and your own dough to bake your bread. You only need these ingredients, Mark. A beer, everyone has a beer at home, salt and sugar, all-purpose flour, and also baking soda. Again, the ingredients you need
Go ahead.
for the pre-ferment we are gonna make, we have to prepare the day before, because the pre-ferment need the whole night, the overnight, in a warm place. It's a good place inside the oven. With the oven switch off, you can put the light if you want to keep more warm, but it's just mix in a bowl 1 cup of flour, all-purpose flour, half cup of beer, whatever you have at home. If it is an artisan beer, much better, because the yeast in the beer is the one who is gonna help us to work with the bread. And 1 teaspoon of sugar. This is only for the pre-ferment. The day after in the morning, you will see a little bubbles on the top of your pre-ferment. Is the way the yeast start working with the flour. And you're gonna use this pre-ferment with the rest of the ingredients for the dough. And for the dough, we are gonna need the pre-ferment we prepared the night before, and we are gonna add to this pre-ferment 1/3 cup of warm water, no heat water, just warm from the tap, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. The baking soda is gonna work with the pre-ferment to help our bread to rise in the oven. 2 cups of all-purpose flour and 1.5 teaspoon of salt. Yes, mix well. If you have a kitchenette or any robot who want to knead the bread, is perfect. If not, you can do in your countertop. So prepare like a bowl, and this bowl just put in a bowl covered with film and have to rest for 3 more hours. You don't have to be watching the 3 hours. You can do whatever you want. It's just let the beer, the yeast working with the dough. I like to use under my cabinets, there is light, and these lamps give a little heat. They're warm. So I like to put under these cabinets. And let's 3 hours, you can do whatever you want. Read a book, watch a movie, doing exercise, going for a walk, whatever you want. So After the 3 hours, it's time to take your bowl. It's not gonna rise a lot. It's just a little. It's gonna give a little elasticity to the dough. And just put in your countertop and give the shape you want to do to the bread. I like to make this bread specifically as a baguette, a loaf, and it's so easy to do it. It's just extend the dough like a triangle and start rolling, and just rolling a little, make more thin on the extremes and a little bigger in the middle, and preheat the oven high temperature, like 390 degrees. When you have shaped your bread, yes, put in the oven. But if you like to have a crust, a really crust in your bread, the trick is the bread needs humidity inside the oven. How we build this humidity? We put a tray or a container, refractarian container from the oven on the bottom of the oven. So when we put the bread inside the oven, you have a glass of water and put in this container on the bottom of the oven. And it's gonna be totally steam the oven, created at very high humidity. It's perfect because it's gonna help the bread rise very well and make crunchy and make the crust very well. So always when you bake bread at home, remember to put a tray or refractarian plate in the bottom of the oven when you heat on, and add the water in the moment you put the bread in. So this bread is gonna asking for a long time cook, bake in the oven. So I need 10 minutes in a high temperature, like 390, and 30 minutes in low temperature, like 355 Fahrenheit, to cook and to take the color, the gold color. And that's it. So you have a really good bread, no excuses to bake bread, even if you don't have all yeast at home. So it's one of the options for the people who really don't have yeast at home. The crumb from this bread is more heavy, more compact, more dense. So it's not gonna be a really smooth bread. That's the reason I offered you the second recipe. This is 2 by 1. So this one is for the people who really have yeast at home and bread flour. The bread flour, the difference with the all-purpose is because the gluten is very high and it's helping to developing and rise very well the bread. And it's easy to make it, and you need less time to prepare. So let's go with the second one I like to call bread nuts. And I'm gonna use even extra virgin olive oil because I really love the flavor the extra virgin olive oil is giving to the bread. So here, the process is different. In the first, we prepare the pre-ferment with the beer, remember? Now we are going to prepare a sourdough. We call masa madre or sourdough. So this sourdough requires a very little dry yeast, like 5 grams of dry yeast, active dry yeast, 100, like a half cup of warm water, and 180 grams of bread flour, and 2 teaspoons of sugar. This is our sourdough. We're gonna mix all of these ingredients, and we're gonna let rest again under our light inside the oven, but it's gonna need only 30 minutes. You can see the difference. We left the beer pre-ferment overnight, 8-10 hours, and this one, because we have the dry yeast in our flour with water, with sugar, it's gonna rise in 30 minutes. And you can see it's so sticky and so elastic, and it started smelling like yeast. You know, it's acidity, and it started smelling like a bread. So when you have your sourdough, we are gonna mix with the rest of the ingredients of the dough to prepare our bread. You need for the bread dough these ingredients: more dry yeast with warm water, again, 430 grams of flour, and salt, 3 teaspoons of salt, and of course, like 50 grams of extra virgin olive oil. We can knead for 5-7 minutes in our KitchenAid robot, knead it all the time. And at this time is when we're gonna add the extra virgin olive oil, slowly. See how the dough is absorbing the olive oil, and it's gonna help to make our dough very elastic, very manageable. When we finish, you have to see a really smooth, good dough. Yeah, stop your robot, put on your countertop, and start making whatever you want to do. I like to make a very nuts dinner, like dinner rolls. We call in Spain montaditos, so we can stuff with any cheese, charcuterie, whatever you have at home, or you can make loaves too, if you like it. So you just give the shape you like it, and put in a oven tray with paper, put over. You don't have to graze the paper or anything else, just put the bread. And in this case, we're gonna sift some flour on the top and let rest for 45 minutes, 1 hour, until you see they raise. They make like a really good soft bread, and bake exactly we bake the beer bread. The only thing is, in this case, the times are shorter. So we have 5 minutes in high temperature, 390, and 10-12 minutes until they have they got the color, the gold color, for 10-12 minutes. And that's all. When you finish, just put in a rack and enjoy. And your kitchen smells good, tastes good, and this bread is really good. It's my favorite.
That's great, Fer. I'm gonna try it definitely. And you can then freeze it, right? Can you just, once you are done, you don't have to consume right away.
Yes, you don't have to eat all the bread you bake, of course. And with this bread, you have a lot of bread. So if you have a family of 2 or 4, you don't have a party now, you are at home, you can freeze it in a Ziploc bags very well, and it's just leave room temperature for 1 hour, 2 hours, or less than that, and you have bread all the time. So you can bake this bread and have for the whole week. So you don't have to bake every day.
Love it. Well, thank you very much, Fer. That was a very nice recipe. And thank you for helping us remain healthy by eating healthy.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Marta. I'm so glad. One thing is, if you don't have bread flour, but you have yeast, you can do it. Okay? Remember, you can do it.
With regular flour, right? Just regular all-purpose.
All-purpose. Yes. The only thing is your bread is gonna not rise a lot. It's gonna rise less, but it's working. It's working. So don't stop you to bake bread. Yes? Do it. And if you have any question, we'll be so glad to answer you. So give us a like, and see you soon next week.
See you next week.
Thank you, Marta. Bye.
Bye.